I like the carpet we put in. It was nice and cushy.
La 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 la.
So it's 12 o'clock.
It's noon o'clock. So I think we're all here and we're calling this meeting to order. And our first order of business is extraordinary business. And we're going to have a presentation on the North Dunes Restoration Project. It's an update report. And I think Agnes is going to give it. Yes?
Yes. First of all, I think I need to do roll call.
I think you're right. Let's do roll call. My eyes skipped a beat.
All right. Commissioner Burling.
Here.
Commissioner Cadell.
Here.
Chair Mosley.
Here.
Mr. Myers.
Here.
Mr. Sowers.
Let's put the out and head the line.
By phone.
I thought I saw his.
He said he was coming in on phone.
Okay, I don't see a phone number on here.
Why do you look at the phone?
Yeah, I don't see him called in yet. So I'm not gonna, if somebody sees him come in at some point or a phone number come in, just let me know and I can ask, and then I'll go ahead and mark him present. But for the meantime, I'm gonna mark him absent. And just as a friendly reminder, as you guys are doing your presentations and asking questions, please be aware of the time. We are on a very tight schedule this week or today because of the meeting this afternoon. So we are only able to do this from 12 to 3. So hopefully we can get through all of our orders of business in a timely manner and not have to cut anybody off. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And now we're ready for Agnes.
All right, good afternoon, commissioners. I'm Agnes Martelet, Environmental Compliance Manager for the city. I am also the project manager for the North Dunes. So let me share my screen real quick. It's going to... All right, everybody can see this. So I will be providing a short update on the North Dunes Habitat Restoration Project based on the report that our biologists put together, which covers years 4 and 5 of our restoration project, which is fiscal year 2019-20 and 2020-21. So a little bit of background on the North Dunes. They comprise 8 acres of environmentally sensitive habitat area. This is the largest remaining dune habitat in Carmel-by-the-Sea. Within the North Dunes, there are 5 different native habitats. There's the dune strand, the coastal scrub, coastal prairie, oak woodland, and pine forest. There are 2 special status species also within the North Dunes. The California legless lizard, which is a species of special concern, and the Tidestrom lupin, which is state and federally endangered. I'm wondering if there's somebody who's not muted.
It is. Hey, Marnie, can you put yourself on mute?
Sorry.
Thank you. And so prior to the start of the project, the impacts on the North Dunes were largely from uncontrolled public access and non-native invasive species. So some background on the project itself. The program started in 2016 under a 5-year CDP. And the CDP for the North Dunes project was just renewed in August of this year. The restoration activities follow the North Dunes and Del Mar Master Plan, restoration plan. And there are biological goals of the plan and recreational goals. The biological goals are to eliminate aggressive non-native species, restore native dune scrub habitat, expand the range of the Tidestrom lupin, and expand the quantity and quality of habitat for the legless lizard. The recreational goals are to establish a trail system that'll provide safe access to the dunes while minimizing impacts of pedestrians, and to provide interpretive signage to enhance visitor experience and knowledge of the dunes, and also to relocate the volleyball courts to reduce habitat impacts. So a short timeline. So the project's been going on for past 5 years. Here is in table format all the activities that have been going on over the past 5 years. We've been conducting weed removal annually, as well as acacia removal. We've also done native species propagation every year. We removed some cypress trees and pine trees in years 3 and 5. We've done quite a bit of cable fencing installation out of the last 5 years. Tidestrom lupin propagation has also happened in the last 3 years, actually 3 of the 5 years. We've done regulatory signage installation in year 4, so a couple of years ago. We conducted some cypress pruning also a couple of years ago, and we reconfigured the volleyball courts 4 years ago. So accomplishments over the last couple of years. These were tough years because of COVID, but we did get quite a bit done despite COVID. We installed 1,200 feet of cable fencing, removed 15,000 pounds of annual weeds, removed 25 cubic yards of ice plant, and planted over 1,000 native seedlings. On the right, the picture on the right shows some of our volunteer crews doing weed removal. This is a lot of work, heavy duty work, and we really could not be doing getting this done without the volunteers. Cannot stress that enough. A couple of additional projects that were completed over the past couple of years. We removed 3 young cypress trees near the volleyball courts. We installed regulatory signage, which you can see in the lower right-hand photo there. And we did really get quite a bit of weed control done despite the impacts of COVID on both the volunteers and staff. You can see the photo at the bottom is the Carmel-by-the-Sea Garden Club volunteers, and then in the upper right-hand corner are the Pebble Ridge Vineyard crew volunteers. So the restoration project team, our biologist is Joey Canepa. I believe she's in the audience today. We also have city staff and contractors. And as I mentioned already, many volunteers, including the Carmel-by-the-Sea Garden Club, Me Earth, and Big Sur Charter School students, and the Pebble Ridge Vineyards crew. Again, this project just could not happen, especially the weed removal could not happen without all the volunteer help we get. This is our progress to date in map format, so you can sort of see where the work has been done. So to orient you around the map, the Ocean Avenue is at the bottom. It's at the bottom of the map right here. San Antonio is to the right. The ocean is off to the left. You can see acacia has been removed primarily in the western and northern sides of the North Dunes. The North Dunes, the delineation of the North Dunes is that red line. Acacia removal happened in the northern and western part of the North Dunes. The annual weed removal really happens throughout the dunes. The cable fencing you can see in blue dotted line. There has been quite a bit of cable fencing installed. It really is starting to sort of delineate the restoration areas and really good trail access for our residents and visitors. So the trails are really shown sort of in red, and the cable fencing was installed so that it's easy for people to find trails. The tree removals in red crossed dots, you have the cypress removals that occurred in 2018. In orange cross, we have the cypress removals in 2020. We had a few pine trees that were removed in 2018 also in the northern part of the site. Those are shown in yellow. And finally, you can see where the Tidestrom lupin habitats can be found. The naturally occurring Tidestrom lupin is shown in blue. So there's a fairly large area up in the northern part of the dunes, a little bit more sort of in the central area. Transplanted lupins are shown in red, and then in green are potential habitat areas for the lupin. Finally, you have the relocated, the volleyball courts are sort of shown in the middle, and those beige rectangles sort of in the lower southern part of the North Dunes. So now a little bit of monitoring results. Our biologist conducts monitoring of the native plant cover every year. And here's sort of in graph format, the results over the past 5 years. You can see in green are the native plant cover numbers. In beige circle are the non-native plant cover numbers. The blue bars are the rainfall each year. Our goals for non-native plant cover is less than 10% non-native cover. The goal for native plant cover is over 50%. So if we look at this graph, we can see the native plant cover starting in year 2 and ever since year 2 and up to the present, we have met our 50% native plant cover. We're actually really doing really well with the native plant cover. The non-native plant cover has gone up and down, and you can see the non-native plant cover is really impacted by how much rainfall we get each year. So in wet years, which we got in years 3 and 4, we have much larger non-native plant cover that has to do with our annuals that really bloom and multiply when there's a good rain. In dry years, then the non-native plant cover tends to go down. And so last year was a dry year, and that was the first year we actually met our non-native cover goal of less than 10%. This is how the dunes was looking. This is our results, monitoring results in photo format. You can really see how the native plants are coming back. And these photos are taken in the spring, which is sort of the best time to come visit the dunes when the native plants are really blooming. But yeah, we're starting to really see a native habitat coming back. This is another way to look at it. These photos are courtesy of the Carmel-by-the-Sea Garden Club. Sort of same area, one in 2010, the next one in 2019. This photo is taken actually from the big cypress tree that's at the corner of Ocean and San Antonio. looking towards the dunes there. You can see in 2010, this was mostly ice plant. And in 2019, you really have a vibrant native habitat back. Now for some numbers for Tystroom lupin. So the goal for Tystroom lupin that's in the plan is restoring over 1,000 individual plants in at least 10 locations and at least 100 plants in each of those locations. Based on the work that we've done over the past few years, we think that that goal may not be reachable. We think we can definitely reach the 1,000 individual plants, but the 10 locations, we may not have enough suitable habitat within the dunes to have 10 different locations. 3 to 5 locations is probably a more reachable goal as far as the number of areas where Tystroom can be found. And you can see that in the numbers in the table below. Fiscal year 2015-16 was the start of the project. And if you jump over to the middle, you see the total number of individual plants was a little under 500 in 3 clusters. And then in this last year of the project, 2020-2021, we can see we've really brought up the number of Tystroom lupin plants at 900. So we're almost at 1,000, but we're only in a couple of clusters. So it appears that, you know, doing 10 different clusters is going to be a little bit, it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be closer to 3 to 5. Oops. So some of the challenges at the North Dunes include trampling by people still a little bit, but especially by off-leash dogs. So our regulatory signage, as you can see at the bottom photo, you know, directs people to keep dogs on leash. But we still see, you know, some people not having their dogs on leash on occasion. Also, herbivory is an issue. Ground squirrels are a real issue in the North Dunes, and we have seen that some people feed the squirrels, and we should just not feed the squirrels. It's just not, it's not good for the squirrels, and it's not good for the habitats. They're very, very destructive at the North Dunes. And finally, weed control in wet years obviously is very time-consuming, labor-intensive. So that's another challenge in wet years. So upcoming tasks are that started this year and continuing to next year. We are augmenting native plantings, including Tystroom lupin. We are restoring native habitat in the northern part of the site, where there used to be several eucalyptus trees that have since been cut down. Those trees, you know, really sort of help have a more non-native habitat up there. So we're really working on restoring the native habitat in that area. More weed control and debris removal. As needed, we may add guideline cable fencing if we see areas that will need it. In next year, we would like to do install interpretive signage, also install a split rail wood fencing along Ocean and San Antonio, and evaluate the feasibility of a boardwalk extension from Del Mar to 4th Avenue. In map format, you can see it here. The map is in the same orientation as the previous one. Those squares and circles in orange would be signage locations, and then we're looking at putting the split rail fencing along Ocean Avenue along the Del Mar parking lot, and then along San Antonio. And the light yellow areas are areas where we're continuing to do weed removal. Any questions? All right. Okay.
Wait, I had a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi there, Agnes. Thank you for that presentation. Really appreciate it. On the update on the North Dunes, they really do look fantastic, and they're in the best shape I've ever seen them. And I spend a lot of time right down there, very close to those volleyball courts. So, but speaking of that area, and in your last slide where you mentioned the discussion around, and this is something we've talked about in the past, this boardwalk, the dune itself seems to be really falling away at an accelerated rate. I mean, I'm not a scientist and haven't been measuring it, but having been down on those courts for 15 years, I really can see the difference. And I'm curious, I know I've talked to Joey in the past, and just as a person of interest down in the area, but is there any talk about bringing back maybe some sort of acacia or some sort of a, I don't know, an anchor, planting anchor on that dune, and in an effort to kind of hold that sand?
Yeah, so we have a proposed CIP project for next year, which obviously is subject to council decision on whether they want to fund it or not. But there is a proposed CIP project for doing a coastal engineering study that would look at all of our coastal areas, including the North Dunes, but then also our seawalls, to give us some advice on best ways to make sure that we protect our coastal resources. And I think, the recommendations will be different, obviously, along the seawalls versus along the North Dunes. I'm anticipating a vegetative cover would help reduce the erosion. But we sort of want to take a look a little bit more broadly at the whole system, so that we don't jump to deal with this and still have issues along Del Mar, because Del Mar has similar issues. Actually, at the bottom of Del Mar, the same erosion issues are occurring. And so I'm hoping that this gets funded this next fiscal year, so that we can really get that looked at, so that we can then get a project on the ground to really do this restoration. Because yes, the dune erosion in the fore-dune is a real concern.
Got it. Thanks. And then just a side note, again, kind of speaking on behalf of the volleyball community who I polled, we'd love to raise some funds as our group and help dedicate to certainly some of the fencing that you're doing by the bathrooms in that area, wherever there might be ball interaction, or perhaps people or dogs, however it might be, where we'd love to raise some money for you and contribute to the cause.
Great. Awesome. Thank you.
I see Ramey's hand up and Commissioner Cadell's hand up. So, and the screen still has the questions thing, so I can't see everybody.
Great.
But there you go. Okay, so I don't know whose hand went up first, but
I think, sorry, Chair Mosley, I think it was Ramey's that was first, and then we can just go down the line, and then Mr. Cadell will be.
Ramey?
Okay, thank you. Agnes and Joey, thank you very much for a very thorough and clear presentation. The graphing was great. It was really, really nice to see the results, as well as have them explained so clearly. I'm showing my age and not remembering, but was there not some replacement tree planting discussed in the beginning of this project?
I would have to get back to you on that. I don't.
Okay. I thought maybe Joey could speak to that.
Oh, Joey might have the answer to that.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Ramey and everyone. There was replacement trees talked about, and they needed to be in a corridor roughly on the line with the bathroom up to the centennial tree in the Carmel Garden Club area. And we had mapped out some of those, put them on the map, but not officially, partly because we were changing hands at that point. Mike Branson was moving away and from the job, and Agnes was coming in. So yes, we're concerned about the historic trees and having suitable replacements coming along. But we are pretty clear that along San Antonio, the trees that have been pruned in the last year or two will just be allowed to senesce and then taken down, because we really need that dune up there for the Tidstrom's lupin. So,
okay, but there was succession trees discussed for down in the volleyball and the bathroom area, correct?
not necessarily the volleyball area at all. There was a line that Jean Ferreira put on a map back in 2009, and Mike and I discussed that several times, and then I believe Agnes had just come on. So maybe we need to renew the discussion, but from what I've seen now in terms of transect monitoring, it is very clear that we can't grow cypress trees next to Tidstrom's lupin for sure. And also the dune scrub is really impacted. It becomes very weedy because of the shade and the coolness that the trees give us. So I'd love to have them. I don't think it can be as many as the ones that have already died. I don't think that would be possible at all, frankly. But anyway, it's a discussion that we should probably be having.
Yeah, we'll circle back around with you on that and sort of take a look at how many were supposed to happen and get a plan of action for that.
Thank you. Commissioner Cadell?
Yeah, following up on that, I think that has to be, if you have that conversation, you have to include in that the context that the original plan called for the removal of more trees. And so the plan has evolved over the last 5 or 6 years, and there have been a lot of people that appeared in front, and a number, we can argue about what is a lot, but there have been several people who have appeared in front of the Forest and Beach Commission who have been upset because they wanted to remove more trees, and they rightly identified that the original plan called for the removal of another, I don't know, I think something like 10 more trees than were actually taken out. So I think the plans evolved, the dunes look great. I think there's been a lot of progress, and maybe we have reached a balance, and I think it's helpful to have a conversation if people want to have a conversation, but I just think it has to be in the context of, yes, we may not have planted some replacement trees that were originally contemplated or considered, but we also didn't take out a number of trees that were planned to be removed. And there were certainly people who, longtime Carmel residents who appeared in front of Forest and Beach who said, I remember when the dune looked, there were no trees there, and that's the way it was originally when the city was founded. And Commissioner Burling, I'm sure knows some of those people. She's not that old, but I'm sure she knows some of those folks. And so, I just think we have to be careful about responding without looking at the overall picture, the holistic picture, before we do anything. And then the other thing I was going to say that I don't think, I'm certain there's not a requirement that dogs be on a leash, but if we are seeing damage to the North Dunes and to the work that has been done so lovingly and so well at the North Dunes by pets not on a leash, then I think we should request City Council to contemplate an ordinance that would require dogs to be on a leash within the North Dunes habitat. Now that might be a volleyball problem. I don't know. I'm not saying the volleyball dogs that dogs play volleyball. I'm just suggesting that maybe some of the folks that show up, but because if you have a sign that says, please keep dogs on a leash or pets on a leash, some people will say, well, that's a request, and I choose not to do it. If you can say city ordinance, dogs must be on a leash in this area, then more people will accept that and abide by it. So I just think we've put a lot of effort in it, and seeing the before and after photos are very rewarding, I'm sure, for the people that have worked on it, and rewarding for those of us who have watched it develop. So I think that's worth protecting. And, the dogs are on the beach they may destroy each other or an occasional passerby, but they don't destroy the beach. But in that area, they can be quite destructive. So thank you.
Any other comments? Questions for Commissioner?
I agree with both things Michael said. There weren't trees in that area in the old days, but as far as the dogs go, you would have to have an ordinance to have people pay any attention at all, I think. And, you know, it's a huge beach. There's plenty of room for dogs if we have an area that it would damage what we've put in.
Thank you. Well, it was a wonderful presentation, Inez and Joey and everyone. That I know Carmel Garden Club has done a lot of work down there too. I have a friend with blisters that she shows me every time she goes down there. So it's looking beautiful, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, we're going to go to public appearances next. Members of the public are entitled to speak on matters of municipal concern, not on the agenda during public appearances. Each person's comments shall be limited to 3 minutes or as otherwise established by the chair. Matters not appearing on the agenda will not receive action at this meeting and may be referred to staff. Persons are not required to provide their names, and it's helpful for speakers to state their names so that they may be identified in the minutes of the meeting. And I'm wondering if anyone from the public would now like to speak. And I hope I'm not missing anyone, but I don't see any hands in the air.
We do now have a phone number that appeared. Is that Commissioner Sowers? Okay, no.
Okay. Okay. Do we have any announcements? No announcements? All right. Let's do our consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are routine in nature and do not require discussion or independent action. Members of the commission or the public may ask that any items be considered individually for purposes of commission discussion and or for public comment. Unless that is done, one motion may be used to adopt all recommended actions. And we only have one recommended action, which is the approval of the minutes for the February 10th meeting. So are there any questions about that?
I move those minutes be approved.
Second it.
Okay, Yvette, can we have a roll call vote?
Yes, I just want to confirm, is Commissioner Sowers on the line or in the Zoom meeting?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
This is Brian.
Okay, thank you. All right, Commissioner Burling?
Are you calling for roll call?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Commissioner Cadell?
Yes.
Chair Mosley?
Yes.
Commissioner Myers?
Yes.
Commissioner Sowers?
Yes.
The motion has passed. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to do public hearings next. And the first one is the approval or denial of an application to remove a redwood at Acacia Way 2 southwest of Flanders Way. So Forester Sarah, can you give us your report?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So the Reeds, who own the property at Acacia Way 2 southwest of Flanders, are proposing to build an accessory dwelling unit on their property. However, they would need to remove one healthy, significant tree to do so. Therefore, I denied the issuance of a permit to remove the tree. The Reeds are appealing to the Forest and Beach Commission today to overturn my denial. So as you can see from the proposed site plan, let me share that real quick, that the tree in question is one tree right here in the corner of where the new structure could go. And there's 4 more redwoods of about the same size right in the same area, as well as another grove of 3 more redwoods down in this area. So with that being said, my recommendation would be to overturn my ruling and allow the Reeds to go ahead and remove that one tree for their accessory dwelling unit. Darlene, we can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm unmuting, trying to find the right arrow here. Okay, does anyone have any questions for Forrester Sarah? Commissioner Myers?
Thank you. I'm sorry, Forrester, I misunderstood you. So I understood your recommendation is to overturn, but what was the reasoning?
So I do not have the authority to permit the removal of certain trees unless they're dead, dying, or dangerous. I can approve those permits without coming to commission if the commission meeting isn't soon enough. So I do not have the authority by code to issue that permit. So I have to deny it. So then my denial can be appealed to this commission to overturn.
Got it. Thank you.
I have a question about we were at the site today and there's a large, to me, it's like a grove of trees. They're like right next to, and then there's the pad where part of this building is going to be, and I'm wondering that if we take that tree out, what's the possibility that the trees that are left there are going to be causing root damage and have to be taken out further down the road? Because I saw in the driveway, several of the pavers were kind of moving, and I'm sure that's probably roots.
Yeah, so the remaining redwoods would be adjacent to the proposed parking, which is much easier to repair than an actual structure. So because of the root systems of the redwood, I'm not really concerned about the redwoods doing damage to the structure for many decades.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission? Commissioner Cadell?
Sarah, 2 things. One is, I understand it, you're seeking approval and overturning your decision as city forester based on the fact that to do otherwise would deny constructive use of the property because this is the only viable location for the accessory dwelling unit?
The way I look at the site, that's pretty much the only place to develop it. But again, I don't have the authority to authorize it. So that's why I come to you. The tree isn't that big. It's crowded by others. There's plenty of trees in the area. And it seems reasonable to overturn my denial.
And then the second thing is, what upper canopy tree is contemplated as a replacement, and where would that be located on the property?
Right. So currently the property has 8 upper canopy trees and 11 lower canopy trees, which I'm pretty sure meets the density requirements for that size of a lot, being 5 upper canopy and 4 lower canopy. So they meet the density requirements.
Okay.
I can't imagine.
I'm sorry, Commissioner.
I read your lips, Darlene. I can't imagine that we would expect them with that many trees to plant another one. I think that it's a very, there's a lot of trees already. If they're healthy, that's great. They certainly have the right to add to their property. And to me, it's kind of a no-brainer that they can take one out under the circumstances, and it does not have to be replaced.
Oh, I did speak in error. I'm sorry. The lot is over the size requirement. So the Forest and Beach Commission does have to decide how many trees the lot has.
Has to decide what?
Has to decide how many trees the lot will have because it's over 8,000 square feet.
And they have, say again, how many they have now?
They have 8 upper canopy trees and 11 lower canopy trees.
Seems like enough to me.
Commissioner Mosley, should we hear from the applicant? If there's no other questions.
Any other questions or discussion from the council? Can we hear from the applicant?
Yeah, one quick question.
Dell? Yes.
What is the square footage of the lot?
Marnie,
8,000.
let's see. Marnie, you're on the line. Do you have that information right in front of you?
I don't. I can certainly pull it up. If you give me just 1 second.
I'll do the same.
Thank you.
We'll race.
I think I also know it, if that's helpful. But certainly feel free to look it up. That's more reliable than my memory. But I do have a number to offer that I recall.
That's Ms. Reed, who is the owner of the property.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Hi.
I met some of you a little bit ago in our driveway.
So when I measure, it's coming up to roughly 19,000 square feet. That's a rough measurement.
So just so we're clear, then the requirements that you just cited, I think you said 5 upper canopy, 4 lower canopy?
Yeah, that I misspoke. It's over the 8,000 square feet, so the commission does have to determine how
Right.
to use the lot.
My point is the ratio, that 5 to 4 is the limit, is for up to an 8,000 square foot lot, right?
Yes.
Okay. And if it's 19,000 square feet, then you're more than twice. In fact, you're almost 2.5 times the size of that 8,000 foot limit.
So in that case, if we doubled that, we'd have, that would be 10 upper canopy trees, and then that would be 8 lower canopy trees. So they would be short 2 uppers, and they'd be short 4 lowers.
Okay.
Sarah, I believe that Marty has her hand up and is ready to comment as well.
Marnie?
You. So I think it's worth noting that the property is encumbered by some easements. So there's the shared driveway that provides access to other properties. So the developable area of the lot is 11,000, just over 11,000 square feet.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion from the commission? Would the applicant like to speak to us?
Sure.
Welcome, Jennifer. Janine.
Thank you. Yes, Janine. Thank you and good afternoon to everyone. First, want to thank you for your time. My husband, Jeff, and I, he's traveling at the moment, so is not able to join, but extends his greetings as well. We would like to build a small ADU and agree with the forester's recommendation for removal of this redwood tree to help decrease the density of the remaining trees. And actually, we've had a long-standing relationship with Brian Jacobson, who is also online with us. Thank you, Brian, for joining us, with Smith Tree. And we hired Brian soon after purchasing our home in 2013 to help us have professional advice about taking care of all the trees on the property. There had been oak trees that had a history of blight, and we were very much wanting to, maintain the health of all the trees on our property. So we've hired him over these, 8 or 9 years. So in general, Brian gives us his opinion about care and maintenance of the trees, watering, fertilizing, and the like. And so we had also reached out to him to ask his opinion about this, the density of this redwood grove, because as Darlene pointed out, the pavers are, even without any renovation, the pavers are unstable and being affected in particular by the tree that in question that we would like to remove because it's closest. And so I just want to also invite, whenever the time is right, Brian's comments. We also asked Brian to write a letter, which I believe Sarah has access to. I don't know if everybody else has seen that, which goes into some detail with photographs, diagramming the proposal and outlining Brian's thoughts on the matter. So that's really all I wanted to say. Just, I guess, in summary, we feel like it's the right thing for the redwood grove from Brian's, what he has shared and his knowledge to actually increase and improve the health of the grove as a whole, to have less density, less crowding. And secondarily, we also are interested in building a small ADU. So kind of 2 reasons, actually. And because Brian has been, with us as a consultant for a long time, we really value his opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. And Brian, did you want to speak to this issue next?
Sure. That little grove looks like it had been planted as a quick privacy screen, and the individuals plugged in together are just way too close together, as you could see. In addition to the one that they're proposing removing now, I think that they should also remove another one and just remove that group to a cluster of 3. The 3 will still form one single canopy because they're so close together, but those 3 would do better in the long term, in my opinion. And I want to underline what had previously been said about the easements going across that property. It's an interesting parcel that the Reeds have, that and a large fraction of the land on that easement is comprised of paved driveways that serve the neighbors, and over which they have really no control. And so what they have as a yard for themselves is very much smaller than the size of the total parcel. So that should be a factor that you would consider when you're wanting to have any replacement plantings. That's all I can think of. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Anyone else from the public want to make comment regarding this? I see no hands, so do we want to bring it back to the commission for further discussion? Or a determination?
Well, we should definitely have a discussion about it. So I'm happy to go first if
Please.
there you go. I don't see any other hands up. From having visited the property, it certainly feels like the tree density, although I didn't walk the entire property, but just from the visual from the street, the tree density looks to be quite good. I wouldn't think that there's a necessity to add additional trees, again, based off of the visual from the driveway. I'm a little taken back by the necessity to remove this tree when it sits so close to another one that also looks healthy. And we've all been in redwood groves and seen redwoods planted close together. They just happen to grow close together oftentimes, just by the nature of how they come about. Sometimes that's the uniqueness of them. It's hard for me to say it's a great idea to cut it down. That being said, I did appreciate the opinion that was shared by Brian Jacobson and his explanation of how the canopies will develop together. So at this point, I'm not opposed to the removal of this tree. I'm interested in hearing other commissioners.
Well, I agree with Commissioner Myers. We were up there. It is full. The lot has lots of foliage and trees, and it's beautiful. And the trees seemed pretty much crowded to me. That my biggest thing about them is that they're ultimately going to cause more problems because they're almost too close together. I agree with Brian. It looks like somebody planted a bunch of trees really close together, not maybe knowing how quickly and how large that particular species was going to get. So I would make a motion that we approve the removal of the tree.
I second it.
Is there any other comment? Then I think we could probably take a vote. Yvette?
Commissioner Burling,
Yes.
Commissioner Cadell,
Yes.
Chair Mosley,
Yes.
Commissioner Myers,
Yes.
Commissioner Sowers.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion has passed.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Okay, so let me get to my next one. We have one more order of business, or I'm sorry, one more public hearing, and it's for the release of a stop work order at Mission Street, 4th southwest of 10th Avenue. And Forester Sarah, can you give us your report, please?
So at the beginning of February, our code compliance coordinator issued a stop work order at this property for unpermitted demolition and excavation. At the same time, the code compliance coordinator noticed that there were very large roots that had been severed in the area of the excavation. And that would be a violation of the municipal code requiring a permit for any tree alteration and failing to protect trees during construction. So I can share some photos with you of what was found on the site. So you can see here that that's a very large root measuring at 13 inches, which is above the 2 inches that require a permit. Here again, another one. And here again, another. So you can see that they're quite large. Based on the bark texture, it looks to be that there was a pine there. And on the opposite side of the property, the bark is different. So I think potentially in the past, there may have been a redwood there, but I can't document that. So I did speak with the tree service that removed the tree, and they confirmed that they were hired to do so. And they also had mentioned that the tree was in poor condition and that the top had snapped out of it in a previous storm. And the next door neighbor also confirmed that it wasn't in the greatest of shape. So my recommendation is to charge Greg Cosmero to pay double the permit fee for the tree and charge the fee for the stop work order investigation. So that would be a total of $1,225, and also require that they satisfy the density requirements for that size parcel once the plans have been submitted to the city for review. And with the release of the stop work order, that would only cover the forestry portion of the order, and the remaining portions would be handled by planning.
Commissioner Myers?
Thank you. Forester Sarah, so we're to believe that it's one tree that was cut down?
That's what I can tell from using Google Street View, going back into history as far as I can. Also, the next door neighbor had confirmed that it was a pine and that she does not recall there being another tree next to it.
Okay, and then as a follow-up to that, you said, having shown us measurements of the roots that were severed, from that, did you do a determination of how big of a tree that was then? How big of a pine that was?
No, because the main stump was missing, it was gone. So we only had the roots that were at the edge of the excavation that would have come from the middle of it. So looking at street view as best I can, it was a sizable tree that had been there.
Okay, and then you had a chance to speak to the company that actually removed the tree, and did you happen to have any dialogue with them regarding how big of a tree it was that was removed? Would they have documented that? Is that something that we could find out?
They did not. They also stated that they had applied for a permit. However, I have no record of that permit being processed through the planning counter.
Okay, thanks. That's all the questions I have for you.
Sarah, this is Brian. Sorry, I can't put my hand up because I'm on my phone. You don't have the computer. So Sarah, this is a question. So given that previous conversation by Commissioner Myers, is this a known tree company that works in Carmel, or these guys are fly-by-nights, or what's the status on the tree company?
Yeah, no, they're an established tree service that works in the area regularly and has a business license.
Why? I mean, again, given the knowledge that they would have, given the Carmel area, wouldn't they have thought about getting a permit as a part of this process?
Yeah, the tree service did state that they applied for a removal permit. However, we have no record of that application.
So in other words, they were mistaken that they didn't go for a permit. And so I'm just trying to understand. So we're going to double up, the removal fee. But, as an example, I mean, I can speak to my own issues with pines. I mean, I had to spend up to $1,000 to get an assessment on a pine just to get the assessment to be able to go along with the permit. Are we being fair to, how we go about these things by just doubling up the permit fee? I mean, is that a status that we've typically followed, or are we kind of creating a new idea on what the penalties are for these types of things?
No, the doubling of the fee comes from the adopted fee schedule approved by City Council. And this is very similar to the Westfall property, where the tree damage was only done to the property owner's own tree.
Well, but so we've gone, so in all of our assessments that we've done or penalties that we've gone through with regards to people removing trees, we've had, again, in this case, there's no tree to make an assessment on, correct? So I guess my challenge is we've had, an arborist report about how valuable the tree was and reimbursing, whether it was the city or whatever, for replanting, et cetera, and we're kind of not, are we not following that in this case because the tree's gone?
So when the commission goes down that path, it's typically because some damage was done to someone else's tree as a result of their construction activity. In this case, they destroyed their own property and didn't impact anyone else's tree.
Okay, so I guess just for not my knowledge, what we're saying is that if it's your own tree and you cut it out without a permit, there is no potential penalty for the value of the tree and taking it out. It's because it's on your property.
That's the way I interpret the code and the fee schedule.
Okay.
That is a little bit problematic for me because what's to stop anybody from deciding they're going to take out a tree and just get a wrist slap instead of paying for the fact that, I mean, they could take out a huge tree and say it was my tree, I took it out, and you're supposed to have a permit. So that's probably something for a different discussion. Commissioner Cadell?
Sarah, Commissioner Stowers raised a good point, and having gone through this myself, we have property out in Carmel Valley. We've got dead trees. I mean, literally dead, falling over dead. And I've been told by the Planning Commission that I have to get an arborist to go out and say, this is certified dead. And this is on 45 acres, thousands of trees, it's heavily wooded and that sort of thing. But before I can take out those dead trees that are just, anybody would look at them and say, that's a dead tree. There's not an ounce of green on it at all. I would have to pay an arborist, and it's going to cost about $1,000 to get somebody to go out and then write a report and that sort of thing. But if I just go ahead and cut them down and I'm in the city of Carmel, then I just get to pay a double permit fee. Is that right? Is that?
That's the interpretation.
Do we understand that correctly? Sorry?
That's the interpretation of the current code.
But typically, had they come in and filed a permit request to take the tree out, you would have either gone out yourself or you would have required them to provide an arborist report, correct?
Correct. So a visual inspection by city staff is done on every tree that has an application for a permit. In some cases, it's the staff's inspection. We've also been provided arborist reports as well as photos by some individuals. So it can happen in any number of ways.
And in this case, we have no one has any photos of this tree before it was cut down?
The only thing that we have is being able to look on Google Street View.
Google Street View, yeah. Yeah, okay. And then I suspect other people feel the same way. I think the tree company is lying when they say they filed for a permit. Because where's their copy of it? Didn't they have a copy? Didn't they retain some record that they filed for a permit? So I just, I feel like there needs to be a mechanism to fine the tree service as well as require the homeowner to do something, because the tree service they know the requirements, they know the ordinances, and they shouldn't be cutting down trees unless there's a permit. Anyway, thank you. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. Commissioner Myers?
Right, thanks. Again, follow-up questions, Sarah, to your presentation. The owner of this property, have you not been able to contact them to ask them what they were doing? Was there any opportunity, any kind of dialogue?
Yes, we have made contact, and they understand that the finding of this commission is a component of the lifting of the stop work order.
Got it. And were they able to share with you how big the tree was, a picture of the tree before, why they chose to cut it down, or anything along those lines?
That information was not provided, but however, Greg Cosmero was invited to this meeting and was provided the agenda packet.
Okay, and then just as a follow-up to some of the other discussion that's come about in regards to the valuation of the tree that we don't know what it was, and then your interpretation, just for clarity, I thought the property on I think it was Santa Rita, where the owner builder went in with the people from out of town and then had some trees damaged. I thought those trees were on her property. Maybe some of them on the right, or I guess the north side might not have been, but I thought that we did assess a value for those trees that had to be removed that were on her property. Wasn't that the case?
Yeah, if I recall properly, the damage was done to the neighbor to the north trees, as well as a city right-of-way tree.
That was a city right-of-way tree.
I do not recall that they were on the interior of her property. Also, similarly, the incident that we had on, I believe it was Galapagos, where one property owner's excavation compromised a neighbor's tree. That would be another case to look at. And then also the emergency removal of a public right-of-way tree for a driveway at 13th and Casanova. So again, that was our property.
Got it. Thanks. I appreciate you clarifying that. Thank you.
I see Ramey's hand's been up for a while, so but we're still on the commission here. So Commissioner Burling.
My memory, and tell me if I have this wrong, but after we had those couple of ones where it was basically a punitive, it wasn't the 50,000 for the one and so on, didn't Bob tell us that the city council had said no punitive assessments were to be made by the Forest and Beach Commission?
I don't believe that was the city council. I believe that was the guidance of the city attorney.
Oh, okay.
This is Brian again. So just as a recollection on this, sorry, my hand's not up. We still have an outstanding issue with Bob and the city about the attorney's recommendation about our ability on penalty phases with regards to tree removal. Again, he was going to get back with us on where the city was with their progress to address that issue. And I don't know where we're at with that. It's been 6 to 8 months later,
so
and still haven't heard anything.
Yeah, I can address that. The city attorney did begin marking up some sections of the code that weren't clear. Since then, we've been awarded the CAL FIRE grant for our management plan, which includes a full review of all of the ordinance and a rewriting. So now we're just holding until we go through that process.
Well, I think would it be advantageous, Sarah, for us as a part of this now kind of open can we have here to address the issue about the fact that if I'm a property owner, I want to take a tree out, I can just do it, and the only thing I'm going to have to pay for is double the permit fee. The problem.
Well, technically, if it happens, because there's a stop work order, that's what triggers the double of the permit fee. So right now, if that happens, it would be the cost of the permit and potentially the cost of a citation issued by the police department for illegal removal of a tree without a permit.
But all I'm saying is in the context of what we do as a Forest and Beach Commission, and we're going down these pathways with penalties for either public trees or neighbors' trees, it would seem to make sense that we need to address trees on private property ownership that are taken down without a permit that have value to the city, and we're concerned about it as a commission on people being allowed to do that without any severe penalties. Correct?
Yes.
Which I would think would need, which I think would need to be a part of what the city attorney is looking at in the context of rewriting the codes which are wrapped around this issue.
Yes, and the commission has stated at previous commission meetings that they would like to see a structure or a matrix of a fine or a fee based on the severity and the size of the tree being damaged. So that would be included in our code update.
Yeah, and all I'm saying is as a follow with the attorney would be to make sure that we're addressing not only public and trespass damaged trees, but also private property trees on homes in the city limits.
Yep. I believe, this is Commissioner Myers, I believe that the director did give us guidance here, and it was first that we were not authorized to be introducing any punitive type penalties for the removal of trees. But instead, we could utilize this, and I don't recall the method, and I know Forrest Sarah could recite it, but there's a method in which the determination of the value of that tree by the age of it, et cetera, the health in that fee or that amount was an allowable amount to require that property to pay. And so that's why my initial questions to the forester were related to the size of the tree so that we come up with that value. And I think, we need to move. I don't know if we have an applicant here and we're supposed to just be asking questions to the forester at this particular point. But there's obviously some things we need to work on and talk about in the discussion portion. So
I do not see the applicant on the screen.
Okay. Well, I'll finish my comments or my questions to you anyway, and then looks like we have the public with the hand up for a long time.
I think Ramey's getting the nod.
Darlene, I can't hear you if you're telling me it's okay to talk.
Tell you what.
Okay. Are you telling me to talk?
Well, first I want to make sure that the applicant isn't there and doesn't want to speak to this issue first, and give that a moment. And then, yes, I know you've been patiently waiting, Ramey. So it seems like no one from the applicant's camp is there. So Ramey, would you like to?
Well, this is once again a perennial problem. As a contractor, and you bid jobs and you look at the cost of what it's going to be to do this work, you look at it and you go, well, if we go down the path of applying for the tree, it could delay us, and applying for the tree removal, it could delay us, and it could cost us money, and ultimately they might not let us take the tree out. So if we do the work on a Saturday or a Sunday, many of the neighbors aren't going to see it because so many people don't live here. So we could go in that direction and we'll just pay the double fees. And so, okay, I would say that this line item is going to cost about $1,200, $1,500. Now, why can't we start to restrict the tree services from working on Saturdays and Sundays? Why can't we penalize a tree service for doing something like this by saying you can't work in Carmel for 6 months? and I'm not a lawyer, and I realize there's probably, Sarah's shaking her head, there's probably all kinds of things that, you know, you're not allowed to do. But the homeowner ought to be responsible, the contractor, who he was, the tree service, and the neighbors ought to be on watch. However, maybe everybody wanted this tree gone. And so it was a group effort, because if nobody spoke up, this tree got taken out because everybody wanted it gone. I don't have anything else to say.
Well, that kind of says a lot. Anybody else from the public have any comment on this? Seeing none, should we bring it back to our commission for discussion and start with Commissioner Cadell?
Thank you. You know, I'm troubled by the fact, and part of our job is education. I'm not sure we've educated anyone with this, and I personally would like to hear from the applicant, and I'd like to hear from the tree company. They apparently chose not to be here today. I'm not prepared personally to lift the stop work order today. I would like to see them at the next meeting. I'd like to see if they have some evidence that a tree permit was applied for. You know, I'd like to hear from them, and I'd like to see if they have any photos of that tree. And I'd like to hear personally a commitment about tree density, that sort of thing. So anyway, I just, me personally, I'm not prepared to lift the stop work order today. I think we need to carry this over to the next meeting. That's my personal opinion.
I agree. Commissioner Myers, did you want to make a comment?
So, well, I do. I actually am in full agreement with the position that I don't feel as a commission we have enough information to actually move forward on a decision here. And I think it needs to be tabled until the next meeting where additional information can be garnered. And that, I don't know if our interim director is on the line with us, but we also do need some clarity about you know, what our ability to implement some sort of a cost for this would be. So anyway, so I stand in the position of not wanting to move forward here.
Commissioner Myers, I don't see him on the line any longer. He was on for a little bit, but he must have gotten off. And he did say he would only be here briefly, and he sends his apologies.
It's no big deal. I would just say, since he wasn't here to ask, but thank you.
Okay.
Looks like Commissioner Cadell has his hand up. And Darlene, you're muted.
Okay, I'm on mute.
There you go.
It shows in two, never mind. It's just great.
I was just going to move that we table this matter until our next meeting.
I second it. And so can we have a roll call?
Commissioner Burling?
Yes.
Commissioner Cadell?
Yes.
Chair Mosley?
Yes.
Commissioner Myers?
Yes.
Commissioner Sowers?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next agenda is orders of business, which are agenda items that require City Council, Board or Commission discussion, debate, direction to staff, and/or action. And the first is the outreach update. And who's speaking to that?
So we
Casey.
have with us today Maren Elwood. She's the individual that Commissioner Myers has been working with. So you two can take it away.
Thanks. I'll just go ahead and let Maren step right out and begin. And I think she's got about 6 or 7 minutes that she'd like to talk through the proposal that was presented back to us back in, I think, August or September of last year. And I think our forester has a deck to run.
I actually do. I'll put it up as a screen share on my end. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. And Ramey, thank you for your initial referral to the commission. I appreciate the ability to propose helping you all with a new website and your digital tools. First of all, my reaction after sitting on this meeting for an hour plus is, boy, got some work to do. So just a little background on me. First of all, I'm a visual anthropologist, and what a visual anthropologist does is we study cultures and turn them into things like websites and digital tools and film and all that. And my training and my position right now is I'm a research associate at the Center for Visual Anthropology at USC. And I work across all kinds of different projects. Some of them are academic. I'm doing a long-term study down in Peru right now, but then I also help a lot of local people with websites, et cetera. So the reason I bring that up is because one of the things I realized in just listening to you all here talk about the complexities of the commission's work is somebody like me who can understand what the culture is and outline the issues and the communication challenges with your key stakeholders, whether they be law enforcement people or the actual people that live in your area. I think I'll be able to really do some justice to the complexity of these issues. So at this point, I'm going to share my screen. And you all should have been provided with the actual full-blown detailed proposal that outlines, all the various different things. What I'm going to do here is just really go very quickly through some of the basics. So when I was initially contacted, the idea was, to provide a proposal for website and social media development. Obviously based really on the conversation today. And I also have known this since I've lived in the area, and I lived in Pebble for a while. And yeah, I get the complexities. Really to bring this to the website and to tools in some way so that people who are moving into the area, people who currently live here, have an easier way to access some of this information. I mean, some of the things that I just learned today, somebody basically stated that, one of the major jobs that you have at the commission is education. And certainly that needs to be a part of any type of communication tool, whether it be social or website. This idea of upper lower canopy trees, the idea that there's a formula for how many trees need to be on a site based on size. I mean, those are all, I think, really interesting information that can be turned into things on the website and on social that could be communicated. So one of the things that I'm looking at here is what's the best way to accomplish these goals, whether is it all going to be on the website? Should some of it be on social? Should there be an ongoing blog? I don't know, we're going to be looking at all those different types of things. So really, I put together the proposal as a one-year project. And again, listening to the complexities today, I'm more convinced that this is really the way to go. The first 2 months really are an assessment or research phase for me. And today really was the first start of that for me, is understanding what's going on and what some of the challenges are, how like who is it who was talking about the fact that it's kind of better to just do it and wait for forgiveness than ask for permission. That I know from having lived in Pebble Beach at some point that, that was kind of this this mantra that was going around about, doing anything with your trees. So, the idea of bringing a better image and educating the public, I think, is something that we need to understand. And so this assessment phase is really all about me learning about you. And really also, I learned a lot today from listening to Janine Reed, the owner, as well as the consultant, Brian Jacobson. I mean, I'd love to include talking to people like that during this first 2 months so that I can understand from the consumer perspective, what kinds of information they would like to have on the website. Is it, how do they want to get it? Do they want to get it on their phone? Do they want to get it, in a downloadable PDF. I mean, those are all the types of things that I'm going to be looking at in that first phase. And then the next phase is once I have all that information in my head, really coming back to you with a website and digital communications plan and getting commission approval on that before we even move forward with any implementation. Implementation really is going to take us about 4 months to really put the whole thing together. And I'm going to rely highly on a team that will be selected by all of you to work with me during this period of time. I'm going to include a lot of online meetings and possibly personal meetings to make sure that I'm heading in the right direction, that everything that we need to have done is done correctly. And then moving to the review, basically the review phase is the beta testing. We get the website tab up, it links to the Carmel City website, whatever other tools we have that we've developed, whether it be Facebook, social, an app, I don't know yet. They're going to be tested during that 2-month period of time, and then we'll go live. And then the other thing I offer at this is at the end, a training period. So again, who at the commission is going to be in charge of keeping these tools up to date. And I will certainly be able to train those people and then provide what I call a communications binder, which will have all the information needed to make sure that everything's moving along. And then I also provide, as part of my contract, a year free phone support. So anytime anybody has a question about anything, something on the website's not working or needs to be updated, you need some help figuring out how to update it, I will be doing that for free for a whole year. So at this point, next steps really are your complete review of the proposal and the selection of me as a vendor, if that's where you decide to go, the approval of the budget and payment, selection of the task force members. This would really be our next meeting, is to decide who would be working with me for the year to make sure this gets pulled off. And then planning a launch meeting, how do we define our roles, develop a calendar to work together, and distribute work or homework for the commission team to move forward with. So my proposal is, again, there's a lot more detail to this in the actual proposal that you received, but bottom line, I'm talking about 2 real phases that need to be completed: website and digital tool development. Really, there's going to be a high level of complexity. And again, after listening to today's talk, I know that that's the case. So that's a $7,000 budget for the year. Search engine optimization, that's critical as with websites nowadays. So that's $2,000. So it's really a base budget for the year for the development of a new website, as well as the social media architecture of $9,000. If we decide in the research phase that an app is desired, I mean, so many people are doing things on their phone. I'm really starting to think an app might be a really kind of good way for people to have an initial contact and get some information from the commission. We'll have to price that separately because it's a completely different type of work. So I've just kind of left that at an estimate of $2,000 to $3,000. And that's really it. So at this point, I'm wondering if anybody has any questions.
Unmute.
Hey, darling.
Yes. Any questions from the commissioners? More discussion?
That's either a good thing or I confused you too much.
I did speak with our web mistress, who was rather hesitant about engaging on new social platforms without a person completely dedicated to keeping an eye on that and responding. And she also did express that she would like the information to reside on the city website. However, I was just thinking, if the commission wanted to build their own microsite, it could be a possibility to partner with Carmel Cares and jump off of their platform.
Is Partner Cares, is that the one that did the library one?
No, that's the Library Foundation. Carmel Cares is a whole separate new city support group.
So I would love to have a chance to be able to talk to the current webmaster. I think, certainly we can integrate the website design and everything into a tab on the current website. Again, I'm not familiar with the hosting platform and the design capabilities. If that's going to require me to write code, then that's a completely different thing than what I have pitched. Basically what I pitched was using some of these website hosting design companies that give you a lot of flexibility without you having to write code, which is going to do two things. It keeps my bid down, and it also makes it easy for you guys to make changes on the back end. So I think it'd probably be worthwhile to have a talk with the webmaster. Kind of how I was envisioning this was the current tab for the commission that's on the city website would have some of the basic information and maybe some of the visual information, but then provide external links out to the other pages. And again, an external link out to a app, if that's in fact what we decide to do. And in terms of social, I get her hesitancy about adding a whole nother level of complexity to the social media. I think that I would like to be able to get through the assessment phase and make a recommendation as to whether or not we think we can use the current social media structure associated with the city, or whether or not the commission needs its own social media architecture. Honestly, me hearing you all talk today, my initial reaction, and again, I'll table my final judgment on this for a couple months, but my initial reaction is it really might be good to have your own Facebook, Twitter, whatever, because then you can immediately, you can directly communicate with your consumers. And I think one of the main issues that I heard today in your discussions, and I know myself from having lived in the area, is it's hard to find this information. And putting it in a simple format up on a social, like if I friended the commission on Facebook and knew that once a week I would get a post from you all telling me that, here's what an upper canopy tree is, and here's what a lower canopy tree is, and here's how many trees need to be on square footage. And even with the information earlier on about the dogs on or off leash and the damage they could do to the dunes. I'd love to be able to have that information in little discrete chunks that come to me kind of in a very digestible format on a platform like Facebook or Twitter or Insta that I'm used to hanging out on. So I think that's why this initial 2-month phase, and then Sarah, you and I definitely will be working together, and then, talking with the webmaster, figuring out how that's all going to work. That's all kind of included in my bid. And the only thing that I think would change my bid is if we decide that the design of this new website for you all has to be done within the current website format, and that format requires me to write code, then that's going to change my bid. So we just have to determine that.
Yeah, the content management system, I've glanced at it and it seems pretty typical and uncomplicated. So
yeah, the contact management, I'm not worried about that at all. If you've already got one established, then, we can link that onto the website. That's not my concern. My concern so much is the actual design of the website being easy to do, like on Weebly or Wix or, some of these other ones, or if I'm going to have to use a platform like WordPress or et cetera, that require me to be a coder, and I am not a coder. Now, maybe the webmaster that you currently use is able to do all that, and she and I can team to do that. I don't know, but we'll have to get together to determine that. Any other questions? Well, thank you. I appreciate the time. Darlene, did you have a question?
No, I was trying to, am I unmuted?
Yes.
Good. I was trying to make sure I was unmuted, and I wanted to say, I always want to say this. It's probably included here, but I'm a little bit fuzzy. What are next steps? You're going to be talking with Sarah, and when do we need to be
Okay, let me share my screen again.
We have to figure out how to pay her first.
So let's go back up to next steps. Really, I think what
Okay,
I'm hoping you can do today, I'm gonna when I'm done here, I'm gonna get off the call so you guys can have your own discussion. And then if you want to approve me, great. The budget and payment, yes, there's real details in the proposal. I'm a bit flexible on those if they need to be. But yeah, I guess I would need to become a city vendor and, you know, go through that process. So I'm not so much worried about that. I'm just, you know, we'll go through that. And then really the next steps, once I'm approved as your vendor, is for us to figure out who's the task force members. Obviously, Sarah will be one of them. I'd love to have another commissioner on the task force, and then maybe one other person. I'm looking for a group of people that really can give me a range of feedback as we move through the project, to make sure that not only am I doing justice to the complexity, but also maybe the you know, the laws that we need to follow, you know, so having somebody on the task force who understands all the rules and regulations. And then, you know, next step also then is planning another the launch meeting. And I'm hoping that launch meeting can happen either late March or early April so that we can get started. Okay.
Thank you.
Actually, you don't need to drop off, and because when we bring it back to discussion, there might be some questions that come up that we'd like to bring back to you. So, I mean, if you want to, you're certainly more than welcome to. But
and it might be nice for you to hear the next item on the agenda as well.
Okay.
For more context.
Okay.
So, Darlene, you want to bring it back to discussion? You're on mute, though.
Darlene, you're on mute.
There you go.
Bringing it back to the commission for discussion.
Well, I'll start it. Happy to. I think that we've had a chance now to review a number of different proposals. We went through this proposal at length at our last meeting, and the determination was to come to this meeting, have a chance to hear from Aaron here. So we've had that. I think as the forester has said, our next steps is to determine whether or not this is the direction we want to go. And it sounds like there might be some stumbling blocks along the way that we need to overcome. But barring any other concerns or questions from the commission, I would move to make a motion to accept this proposal and begin this process of our outreach.
Second.
Great. Does anybody else want to say anything before we take a vote? No? Yvette, can we have a roll call? Am I muted?
No, you're not muted.
Oh, good.
Sarah, I don't think that this is something that needs to be voted on because it's an update. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't think so. I think it's just a general agreement that this is a good direction to go in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Maren.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to working with the commission. I think this is an interesting and challenging job, and I'm ready for the task. I'm going to put myself on mute and again, and just continue to listen in.
All right, our next order of business is the scenic pathway recommendation discussion. Who would like to start?
Yes, so from the last meeting, from the last Forest and Beach Commission meeting, the commission received a presentation from our Director of Community Planning and Building. And the topic was on potential new bench locations on the scenic pathway. Planning Commission has asked this commission to come back with recommendations on bench placement if new benches are needed, so on and so forth. So I spoke with Commissioner Sowers, and we discussed the idea of collecting data. how can we make a recommendation? I'm sorry, how can the commission make a recommendation without fully understanding the desires of the stakeholders of the scenic pathway? So we discussed a little bit about how could we take a survey. Is it a postcard? Is it people on the pathway? Is it a stakeholder meeting? That sort of thing. So really, this is a discussion about what vehicle can we use to collect data to help you make an evidence-based policy direction. Does that sum it up, Commissioner Sowers?
Yeah, that does, Sarah. My only kind of 2 cents on this is that I think it's important that you guys, that with everyone kind of read through Brandon's overview. So, I mean, again, because it is kind of what was presented and approved by the Planning Commission. And so we're kind of re-looking at that. But again, as Sarah said, the stakeholders, i.e. the residents of Carmel, maybe even some tourists, and, you know, whether it's, I think we talked about combination of postcards, on-site, you know, maybe hand out postcards on-site on the pathway, to just get as much feedback, maybe as Sarah had recommended using what was the website you said? The
Nextdoor.
Nextdoor website to take survey, which I think they did for the pickleball courts, and just try and get a nice volume of feedback from the community, whether it's pro or con on benches, so that at least we have an understanding of, as Sarah mentioned, the stakeholders. And I think that would at least give us some idea of the direction to go with this idea. I also wanted to just, as a part of Brandon's presentation, you know, both verbally as well as written, and I was unaware of this until I talked with him the other day, and there are 2 bench locations that have already been approved and are in process of being put in. And there was a little bit of some confusion between the 16 that are presented of additional benches on top of the 2 that are already being presented as approved. So, because I had heard from when we were talking to the Planning Commission that everything's on hold until we give a recommendation to them about where we're going. So, a little bit of a challenge, because I think between Shirley Moon, who's kind of the Carmel Cares manager of the pathway, and Brandon's presentation, there's some confusion over those 2 that had been approved to be put in, and Shirley had thought they were part of the 16, so they shouldn't be put in. But Brandon's told me that no, they're approved and they're ready to go. So there's a little bit of some confusion over this, and I just wanted to make my fellow commissioners aware that 2 are going to go in. So we're going to have more than just the 16 at this point. If we had 16, we've got 2 others that are going in right as we speak. So.
Do you know where they're going in exactly?
You know, Brandon knew exactly where they were going, and Shirley Moon knows where they're going, but she's not happy with where they're positioned. So I think, you know, Brandon's going to reach out, whether it's Brandon or it's Rob Culver with the Public Works Department, about where, you know, they're best suited to go, because I had really thought we were on hold until we gave our recommendation. It was blessed by the Planning Commission and the City Council ultimately. So I'm not sure.
Okay. Commissioner Burling, I saw your hand first, and then Commissioner Myers.
Okay, so if I think maybe you're getting this too, but it feels like this is really being rushed. You know, first of all, it came up with the City Council and it all got decided. 2 different times I went down around sunset, which is when you see the benches filled the most. And they were beautiful days like we have, since we don't have rain anymore. And in each case, going from 9th through 14th, or really Santa Lucia, there were 16 benches, and 9 were filled one time and 8 were filled another time. Several people had brought their folding chairs where the squirrels are there between 9th and 8th, and were sitting there just enjoying themselves in a little group that they had made. This was a couple different groups. I think this is being way too rushed. I think that we need to get the information, whether it's postcards, but it needs to be several things. A lot of people don't use Nextdoor, but that would be a possibility. And the Friday letter would be another possibility. But then whether you stood out there with a pad and paper or something, I just think, I think it's really important to the beachfront of whether we are loaded with benches or whether we are just a few more than what we have now. So that's my thinking.
Commissioner Myers?
Thanks. This, again, what we're doing right now is simply having a discussion around this topic. So back to the original bench plan, as I understood it, the 16 was the new cap, and that there had been 2 approved of the 16. And I remember asking Brandon specifically about the timeline on the balance of them. And there really wasn't a timeline to complete them, although he had said that there were, I think, enough applications at that point to fill them all up. But whether or not they were all going to be built at once, that was yet to be determined. And then also, of course, because there suddenly was a big interest and stir up amongst residents, et cetera, that they were putting a pause as far as I understood, or I'm just recollecting the conversation that we had with him when he made the presentation to us. That was the pause on the additional, putting any more in, and then going back to the residents and stakeholders to discuss the laws around it, why the decisions were made, et cetera, and then to try to get a better pulse. And so, to Commissioner Sauer's point, there are certainly some ways in which we can try to survey the community at large. And there's some good ideas that are out there. I think the pine cone seems to be one of the absolute best ways, in my opinion. And we could fund an ad that just that could actually be, here's a box, check yes if you like benches, or no if you don't like benches, and then maybe put a collection box in the post office or somewhere like that, so that people can just drop it off, or if they want to mail it, or however it be, maybe City Hall, but make it as simple as possible, that all you have to do is cut something out and turn it in. And maybe that could be an easy way, because to Commissioner Burling's point, like, hey, not everybody's on Nextdoor. I don't even know how to get on Nextdoor. So and I thought that was a dating site, so I don't want to get in trouble. So so I think that the pine cone seems to be one of our best vehicles. And certainly, we could all go down on our own and stand with a little sign that says we're a commissioner and we're collecting residents' opinions, but whether or not it's going to be a fair sample or true sample, it's going to be really hard to tell. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Yeah.
The 2 that are approved and not built yet, well, one location is scenic just north of Martin Way, and the second one is south of 12th.
Thank you. Commissioner Cadell, did you want to?
Yeah, a couple of things. Rob, scenic north of Martin Way, that's right at the Walker House, right?
Right.
I mean, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. My only comment is surveys are useful. It's not going to be scientific if it's in the pine cone or on Nextdoor, or you're handing out postcards. I mean, it's not going to be very worthwhile and are very meaningful. If you want to go to the expense to hire somebody to do an actual poll, fine. Then the design of the question and everything. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it or we shouldn't do it. I think feedback is useful, and but I do think we have to be careful the way we frame the question. Everybody likes benches. But it's not a question of do we want benches? It's do we want a bench on every 15, 20 feet? And that's what troubles me. And I walk that beach every day that we're in town. And I'm like Commissioner Burling. I've never seen every bench filled, never. I don't know that I've ever seen even half of the benches filled. I think Commissioner Burling's approach is exactly right, bang on, because sunset is when you see more activity at the benches generally than any other time, or people are at the beach to watch the sunset. And if they're not filled then, when are they going to be? And this is not a, if you build it, he will come type thing. This is sort of like, we want the need. We're not just building benches to build benches. And I have great respect for people who do a memorial for their family or a loved one or themselves, for all I care. But there are other ways to do that. But we're really talking about a treasured part of our city, and having it cluttered with benches that are empty and people aren't using is a poor way for us to maintain our city, and you do create another thing to maintain too. So it's not just putting a bench there and then you never have to worry about it or think about it. I find benches when I walk to often be an obstacle that you have to navigate around, whether somebody's on them or not. So that's another consideration. So I like Commissioner Burling's approach, and maybe the starting point should be to actually go down on the scenic and walk it multiple times at different times of the day and different days of the week, and see how many benches are occupied, and just sort of do a chart. And if at some point there are people standing in line for an empty bench, then God, let's get some more benches, but I don't think that's ever been the case or ever will be the case. So I think I like her approach better than anything I've heard. The rest is fine too.
This is Brian again. So again, I think Sarah's point was, and again, wanting to bring it back to the commission was, we want to do a survey that outlines all these areas: Pine Cone, next door, survey down at the beach, visits to the beach by commissioners or friends, because I think on an overall basis, the thing that I think Shirley Moon with Carmel Caris kept pounding on the table: where is the need? If we're going to add benches, can we please define the need? Because that's kind of the overriding guideline that's here. Are there more benches needed? And I don't think, as we've stated here, that there will be, unless it's 4th of July and the beach is closed and you can't even go down to the beach, would all the benches ever be taken? And I don't think that's going to change. And so it's really about what do our constituencies want? Do they really think we need more benches? Because anything we're going to do or see down there is going to show that there's no way we'll ever go down there and see every bench occupied. Yet we're adding 2 more benches when I had thought we didn't have any more benches going on there, or we're on a hold until we make a decision here. But that isn't the case. We're adding 2 more. So the 16 is in addition to the 2 that have already been approved and are going. So.
First, can I say I'm getting confused by the whole roll around here. And Commissioner Burling wants to say something, and I agree with where she's coming from on this bench issue.
Okay, well, this actually is, I think it's being pressured by so many people wanting to have their names on the benches. I don't think it has anything to do with who sits where, frankly. But the other thing is, at one point, they had passed a resolution, I don't know when, but I think it's when, in the early 2000s, that 20 period. But anyway, that they would only last under that person's name for 15 years. So what are we going to, if it's not that anymore, we get 15 people to do, 16 people to do these 16, and then what? There's 16 more who wanted. So, you know, we talked once before, we used the words, it's not a memorial there. The beach walk isn't meant to be a memorial. And, you know, again, time is necessary to really think this thing through and decide what we're really trying to accomplish. Is it an income thing for the city, why they're doing this? Is it because so many people have applied? And no wonder they applied. What a beautiful spot to have your name on a bench if you like that sort of thing.
So how do we get more time?
So this is Brian. So there's no time limit here. I think we were directed by the Planning Commission to try and get back with them in a reasonable amount of time. And I remember one of the planning commissioners said, you know, they don't get back to us, you know, by the end of the year, then that might be a little bit further out there, but they're in no hurry for us to respond right back to them.
And
I'm not pressing to make a decision tomorrow. I just want to, I think Sarah and I, as being tasked by the commission to come back with ideas and get your ideas as well, to get some feedback from our constituencies, if that helps us in our ability to be able to reply back to the Planning Commission about our opinion or our recommendation, really, to the Planning Commission.
Commissioner Cadell, I saw your...
Yeah, I had it up for a moment, put it down, but I guess, you know, the fact that we're going ahead and having 2 benches installed, Rob Culver, you're on the phone. Is that necessary? Can't we pause those? I personally, I mean, I live over the line. I'm not in the city. And I know that the city has sort of special jurisdiction, but technically, for example, scenic past Martin Way is not in the city of Carmel by the sea.
Yes, it is. It is. The city of Carmel goes past the Frank Lloyd Wright House.
Okay. All right. Well, I thought it ran down Santa Lucia.
It's Santa Lucia on the west to past Frank Lloyd Wright House, and it stops at Santa Lucia on the east. We don't want it to be too obvious, you know, it's got to be kind of secret.
Okay. All right. But I really would like us to take some time on this, and I'm more than willing to organize if people want to do it, and maybe we could do this in rotation or you know, take a day or something like that, and just walk. I mean, I really do think it should be determined by need, not by simply a desire to have your name on a bench, and so, or somebody else's name on a bench. And again, I'm not offended by that at all, but we are custodians of that view, of that pathway, of the beach. And we don't want it cluttered by things that are not contributing to the experience. And if, you know, we've already got 30 something benches there, if another 16 benches aren't going to contribute to that experience, if they're not needed, then we shouldn't allow them to be there. And so I'm willing to take a day. I'll do it and just go through, and we can do it at like 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and 5 o'clock or something like that, and document how many people are on how many benches at those times. And we could rotate that a bit and see what the real need is, the real demand for it is. That to me makes the most sense. But you know, thank you.
Michael, to answer to your comment, I have put these last 2 on hold until all this smooths over. And just so you're aware that there were 8 approved in 2019, 8 new locations, and then another 3 in 2020. So this is the last 2 that we're working on from the 2020 approvals.
So then you do have to ask,
Remy, I
where does
see
it
your
end?
hand.
Where does
I'm
it
sorry.
end? Sorry.
I see your hand up, Remy.
The Friends of Carmel Forest has a great solution if somebody wants their name on something. It's a tribute tree. Contact carmelforest.org and we'll get a tree planted with a tag on it, and you can put an inscription in memory, in honor of, and that's the solution to this.
You know what? I think that's another idea. I was sitting here going, I understand what Commissioner Goodell is saying. I'm not. It doesn't need to be a memorial. I understand that people do like to memorialize their loved ones, but and it looks like somebody came up with a way that this is the way to do it. But I think I personally I'll go do the walk anytime you want me to, but I've never seen those benches all full. And I personally think we've got enough benches. And to come up with another idea that could be Carmel in order to pay tribute to your loved ones, like planting a tree. And I know many people have done that. So maybe we need to be able to give people another way so that they won't want the benches. And I also saw that Shirley Moon has joined us, and her hand is up if she would like to talk to us.
Thank you. I've actually been listening to all of this, and I could not seem to get connected, so I finally did. I appreciate the comments from the commissioners. I'm totally in agreement with taking our time, sorting this out properly, and circling back to the guidelines that are provided to us, which is what Brian was, his point was. It's a very specific guideline that says we need to demonstrate need before putting furniture in the right of way. And anecdotally, none of us can see the need, but I do think that we need to do maybe beyond anecdotally to circle back to the comment I think one of the commissioners made about documenting the usage of the benches. I have done that with photographs. And as you know, every photograph is time, date stamped. And I can go back 18 months and show you empty benches. I've also taken pictures at sunset so that I can get the highest usage time. And so I can start that type of a survey with just the photographs I have. But Brian and Sarah and I were talking about trying to just address this demonstrated need issue. And that's why Sarah has brought this up. We are in no way, shape, or form needing to rush this, but we did not want this to fall off the radar and then have us fall back into the bench creep that we've experienced over the past 30 years, where 8 benches are approved in 2019, 3 in 2020, and it continues to contaminate the entire pathway because these are pieces of furniture that are permanent. So there's a lot of complexity that needs to be sorted out before we go forward. But I think Sarah was just trying to say, we're talking about it. We're trying to come up with a format that would be fair to go ahead and demonstrate whether there's a need or not. And then I think Brian and I have talked about going back to those guidelines, and they need to be looked at. The Forest and Beach Commission could give a lot of direction on that. If you have a copy of them, they're very confusing. So anyway, thank you all for listening. That's it.
Thank you. I am muted.
We can hear you.
Sarah, can you hear me?
Yes. So just asking for clarification of direction as your staffer. Are you wanting to document usage, or are you wanting to solicit feedback from the public? Or both?
Or both. Let's see any hands.
Don't all speak at once.
There, it looks like there's another public comment as well.
Oh, thank you. Teresa, tell us.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. Good afternoon. So it is open for public comment right now. I just want to make sure that
Well,
we're
it's,
yeah. Okay. All right. I just wanted to say I appreciate wanting to document usage as well as getting feedback from the public and stakeholders. Certainly there's the residents who are stakeholders and Carmel Cares and Friends of Carmel Forest. And I just ask that the commission and the staff of the city also remember that one of the interested parties and stakeholders are the bench applicant families. So I'm certainly hopeful that there can be, some good dialogue and, compromise regarding this. I love the idea of also being able to do tribute trees. I know when our family put in an application, we had no idea there were plaques. We only wanted to dedicate a bench in my father's honor. It wasn't to put his name on it or anything. So we just wanted people to have the experience of the benches. So just to make that clarification. Also, the other point I wanted to make was that at the January 12th Planning Commission meeting, Commissioner Locke had asked that the Forest and Beach Commission actually do an official site tour visit, which my understanding those are open to the public. So I want to make sure that be reassured that will happen, so that as the public, whatever party they're interested, they're coming from, can be there for that site visit and to make comment. And then just the other thing, just to, I know there are, all these benches sound like lots of benches, but even if you were to add 16 additional benches, it would only add 3% of benches. The pathway would, the benches would take up 3% of the pathway. 97 to 98% of the pathway would still be untouched by the 16 new benches. So I've written a letter to that effect earlier, but I'm just asked that you remember the bench applicant families too and do outreach to them. But my goal is that it's a beautiful pathway we all love. We all want it to be aesthetic looking, integrated, holistic. And I hope that we can all work together as a group and hear each other's ideas out. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Forrester, Sarah, did you want to, it sounds to me like we want to get information both ways, both with public and, I don't know, standing in front of the post office. If we could set up a schedule, maybe, like Commissioner Cadell was talking about, really surveying the path at different times to see what the usage is, what the need might be. And then also doing a public outreach with all the things we talked about, the Friday letter, the standing at the post office has always been a good way to reach out to the people who live here, and then maybe down on the pathway to kind of get a real good survey on what people are thinking. I don't want that part of the survey thing to go the way of the pickleball courts where we didn't get all the stakeholders involved. Commissioner Myers.
Yeah, directionally for Sarah, I would agree with Chair Mosley's position that both avenues would be ones in which we would encourage you to pursue. And whether or not that means you need to be staying outside the post office, I think you can also bring that back to the commission. It sounds like you've got some willing
Not you.
volunteers.
I didn't mean you, Sarah.
No, I know. But so it sounds like there's some willing volunteers, and I believe it sounds like every one of the commissioners has a concern about this and would like to be active in it. And I love the tribute trees. We need to do more of those. Yeah, that's a great part of our outreach.
Okay, so for next month, I will see what I can frame out and talk to some of my colleagues that use surveys. They call them instruments, in collecting data, and see if I can start down the path of coming up with some neutral questions without a tone pro or con. Just have whatever we use just be neutral, and go from there. Does that sound reasonable? Alrighty. Well, I think we're running on time.
We're working on it. We need to have the City Forester's monthly report for February 2022.
Yeah, sure thing. Let me get where I can see it. All right, we planted 2 new trees. And I had, since the beginning of January to the end of February, I've been removing dead pines, and they're big. I'm seeing lots of damage from bark beetles. So they are taking the trees down as a result of the drought stress. So whenever we have a pretty warm day, about 3 days later, I find a really big dead tree. So that's a little bit concerning, and I hope that trend turns itself around. I had 5 people confirm that they planted the trees that they were supposed to via photos. And then we started a project to remove ivy from the right-of-way. We have poison oak and ivy that kind of encases the bus stop down by the Mission. So we're going to start there as our first spot. We're going to refresh the playground mulch at Forest Hill Park. Our Ocean Avenue renovations are still underway. Had some meetings today about what it could take to get the irrigation clock to talk to the pump clock so that we can set that, get water moving. It's free water, get water moving and start planting the area. Mike Tope will be leaving us. He's taken a position as the Assistant City Forester in the city of Monterey. So congrats to him. We have 1 new employee who is our arborist technician. His name is Eric Miller, and he is on the clock and ready to go. Also, I brought in a consultant to inventory the trees downtown and make recommendations as to what needs to be pruned and not pruned and that sort of thing, so I can issue that work to a contractor. It's just something I want to do, but I just never have time to do. So hopefully that will happen here we'll get wrapped up with the data and then be able to start maybe April on the pruning downtown. My graphs are pretty unexciting because we're still at the beginning of the year. Let me share my screen. So for February, we permitted 14 removals and required 9 new plantings. It's not perfect, but we're still not falling really far behind so far. So this graph, of course, won't really have much meaning until we get a little bit further into the year, and then we can see the difference between replanting uppers and replanting lowers. This is the tree work that the city has performed year to date. I'm really a little bit concerned about that removal number, again, with the pines. I fear that we're going to outpace 2021 in terms of removals. I hope not, but I think that could be realistic. And our regular work numbers was pretty consistent last month, except again, that high number of removals. So any questions about that? Anything you want me to go over, cover?
I'm muted. Okay. Anyone from the commission have any questions for Sarah? And anyone from the public? I don't know if Ramey, I saw your hand up. Did you want to say something, Ramey?
Yes. Thanks, Darlene. Sarah, I was just wondering if there had been any further discussion and delegation of the work that the Friends of Carmel Forest wants to pay for with respect to whether it's pruning or removals or whatever. Remember, we had a conversation with Bob that we were donating some money from a grant that we had received some years back. And we feel like we really want to get that debt out from under us.
Yeah, I think I was thinking about that, and I think water is probably where we should probably discuss, be it putting in those flat at grade gator bags or bringing in a contract to water. I think this year is going to be a pretty hot summer, and those young trees that are still getting established would probably need a little extra TLC.
So there's no plan to be watering the young trees on a regular basis?
We are vastly understaffed right now. So it's me, Renee, and Eric. So I'm gonna have to contract water as soon as Mike's gone, because he's the one that does all of the watering. So I'll have to bring in another entity regardless.
Okay. Well, that would be right in line with our goals. So if that's the direction it takes, that's fine. Just keep us in the loop.
Okay, will do.
Thanks.
Okay. Our next order of business is just to discuss the potential of Forest and Beach Commission meetings moving to a hybrid format. And who's going to lead this discussion?
That would be me.
That would be me.
JC, did you have a question?
No, I wanted to lead it.
You are more than welcome to do this part. There's been a lot of questions. Obviously, you guys read the staff report, and going by the Brown Act and what Governor Newsom has declared as a state of emergency during COVID. And as of March 1st, 2022, City Council held its first council meeting in a hybrid format, limited in-person attendance and Zoom. The meeting was held according to the guidelines established in the urgency ordinance adopting rules of conduct for city facilities, adopted at this February 28th City Council meeting. City Council has left it to the discretion of each individual board and commission if they would like to continue with the Zoom format or switch to the hybrid limited in-person and Zoom format. So there's been a lot of changes. It kind of changes almost daily. And it was a little bit confusing to some of us as far as who can enter into city facilities and if you had to show proof of vaccination. That is only, showing proof of vaccination is only if you're going to be attending a commission, a board, or council meeting. So the urgency ordinance is intended only to govern meetings in city facilities to ensure that safety of the staff and members of the public attending meetings, and members of the public attending any city meeting must do the following. You must wear a face mask covering at all times. That includes commissioners, staff, and anyone in the public. And then also for commissioners and, well, staff already has to, commissioners have to show proof of vaccination, including their booster. And then also sign in and on the contact tracing sign-in sheet, which is at each one of the city facility buildings as well. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And Sarah and Fred and myself have already planned on talking in person about who will be checking vaccination cards. It's going to have to come at a staff level. For the council meeting, they had volunteers do it, but that's not going to be available to commissioners, to commission meetings. So there's some more things that we still have to work out. So that's kind of where we're at with this particular situation on how we want to move forward and when we should move forward with meeting in person or continue in Zoom or do the hybrid.
So for the April meeting, do we want to attempt the hybrid if we can, or do we want to wait to the next month? Up to you guys.
Commissioner Cadell.
I'm happy to do the hybrid. I'll show up and have my vaccination and booster card and everything else.
Commissioner Myers?
Yep, I feel the same way.
Okay. And anybody else from our commission want to talk about this? I'm just kind of a go with the flow girl, so.
This is Sauer, Brian. I'm good with the hybrid.
And I missed the whole discussion because I got a new hip last week, so I have to move around every once in a while. So I missed the conversation.
So we're talking for the next meeting, if we can, using the hybrid model where commissioners can be in the chambers and so can the public, or you could also be on Zoom. So it would be an either or and situation.
I would like us to be able to meet again. So I don't know what you all said.
Alrighty, so I will do my humanly best to make sure that we have all the logistics in place then for the April meeting. But again, like Yvette said, things can change daily.
Yes, this is what we're doing. We're skiing moguls, keeping our knees flexible and knowing there's going to be bumps all the way down the hill.
Well said.
All right. So that's enough discussion on that. Are there any future agenda items we want to add?
We'll be talking about the feedback methods for the benches.
Okay.
Sounds like we need to identify those that might be interested in the focus group for outreach.
Okay. We'll add that to our agenda for sure. All right, anything else? Then I think we can adjourn and we're kind of on time.
Yeah, good job.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Hey guys, thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Thanks, everybody.